I can still hear the echo of my father's voice, sharp as a whip, cutting through the quiet of our living room. "Return the $98,000, he barked, his finger trembling as it pointed at my chest, or don't come back to this family." For a moment, the words didn't register. They hovered in the air, unreal, like a bad dream I might wake from. My father had always been stern, but I'd never seen his face carved into such cold fury. And when I turned to my sister Amanda for some sign of support, her lips curled into a smirk that was somehow worse than his anger. "You took Mom's money," she said flatly. "We all know." I wanted to scream, to hurl every sacrifice I had made in their faces, every night I spent sleeping in hospital chairs while they carried on with their lives. But my throat locked up. My hands went cold. And before I could defend myself, Amanda twisted the knife deeper. "You think being the good little caretaker makes you the saint of this family. We see you for what you are, a thief." That word burned. Thief, it clung to me like smoke. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, was that this wasn't about theft at all. It was about a secret my mother had hidden from them, one she had entrusted only to me, and that secret was about to break us apart forever. But before I tell you how my family's perfect picture shattered into shards of betrayal and suspicion, let me take you back. Because the truth didn't begin with that screaming match in my father's house. No, it began years earlier, in our cozy suburban home in Pittsburgh, when I was just a girl learning what it meant to play my part in a family with carefully assigned roles. From the outside, we looked like a picture-perfect family. Neighbors waved as we piled into the car for church on Sundays. Teachers admired how involved my parents were in school events. We had the two-story house with the neat lawn, the backyard swing set, even the golden retriever. But behind closed doors, things were different. My father, Harold, was the king of the house. He ran a successful construction company, and he ruled our family the same way he ran his business, with strict rules, no-nonsense expectations, and very little patience for weakness. If you wanted his approval, you had to earn it, and even then, it was never guaranteed. Amanda, the oldest, had figured out the system early. She was the golden child, Daddy's favorite, with her perfect hair and her perfect smile. She could charm him into anything. If she brought home a B on her report card, Dad brushed it off as a fluke. If I brought home an A, he would only nod and say, "That's what I expect." Jackson, the youngest, was the family wild card. He got into trouble constantly, skipped homework, talked back, even stole candy from the grocery store once. But somehow, Dad always forgave him after one sheepish grin. Jackson was the boy, the heir, the one Dad secretly admired even in his flaws. And then there was me, Cherry, the middle child, the reliable one, the one Mom always counted on. If Amanda was the star and Jackson the troublemaker, I was the glue. The quiet, responsible girl who remembered everyone's birthdays, who kept secrets, who learned not to cause waves. I was my mother Elaine's shadow, her helper, her confidant when the tension in the house rose too high. Mom was the only warmth in that house. She had this way of softening Dad's sharp edges, of turning disasters into manageable bumps in the road. When Dad slammed his fist on the table because dinner wasn't hot enough, she would gather us in the kitchen afterward and whisper, "Your father loves us. He just shows it differently." I clung to her comfort. I needed it, because under Dad's perfectionism, even breathing felt like a test sometimes. I didn't realize until much later how deeply the roles we played as children would follow us into adulthood. Amanda grew up entitled, always assuming the world owed her something. Jackson stayed reckless, charming his way out of real consequences. And me, I carried responsibility like a second skin. That responsibility became my whole life 2 years ago, when Mom sat me down at the kitchen table with her hands trembling. "They found something," she whispered, eyes wet. "Stage 4, pancreatic." The doctor had given her 6 months to a year, but I refused to believe it. Dad attacked the diagnosis like it was another business deal to be conquered. Specialists, treatments, experimental drugs. Amanda showed up once in a while with expensive flowers and an air of martyrdom, always sighing about how busy she was. Jackson popped in with ice cream and jokes, making Mom smile but never staying long enough to take the night shift. So it fell to me, always me. I became her primary caregiver, balancing my full-time job at the bank with endless appointments, medication schedules, and sleepless nights in hospital recliners. I watched her shrink from vibrant woman to fragile shell, and I hated myself for resenting the burden even as I cherished every moment left. The others didn't see the late-night tears, the whispered confessions, the journal she pressed into my hands one night with trembling fingers. "When the time comes," she said softly, "you'll understand, and you'll know what to do." I didn't know what she meant at the time, but I would. Oh, I would. Her death hit me like a collapse of the sky. I was the only one with her in the room when she passed, holding her hand, whispering, "It's okay, Mom, you can rest now." The funeral was a blur of flowers and casseroles, Amanda's theatrical sobbing, Jackson's erratic grief, and Dad's stiff, businesslike composure. People lined up to tell me how strong I was, how proud Mom would be, but inside I felt hollow. A week later, we gathered in the lawyer's office for the reading of her will. That's when the first real crack in the facade appeared. The house went to Dad, as expected. Amanda got the vacation property. Jackson inherited Mom's art collection and vintage car. The jewelry, all of it came to me. And then the bombshell: Mom had named me executor of the estate. Dad's head snapped up. "Excuse me, I'm her husband, that should be my role." But the lawyer only shook his head. Elaine was insistent. "Cherry has full authority." Amanda choked back outrage. "That's not fair, she's the oldest daughter, she should've." I sat frozen, the folder of documents heavy in my lap. I hadn't asked for this. I hadn't wanted control. But Mom had chosen me, and somewhere deep inside I understood why. That night, I combed through stacks of financial records, bills, property deeds, trying to bring order to the chaos. And that's when I found it. An account I'd never seen before. My mother's name on it alone. A balance just shy of $98,000. It wasn't in the will. It wasn't in any shared records. And it was far too deliberate to be an accident. My heart thudded as I stared at the numbers glowing on the screen. What was Mom hiding? And why had she trusted me to find it? The next day, Amanda called. "Dad says you found some kind of hidden account. Is that true?" I hesitated. "I'm still looking into it. Don't worry, I'll be transparent about everything." Her voice dropped into venom. "Convenient, finding secret money after she's gone. You always thought you were better than us. Maybe you think you deserve more too." The accusation cut deep. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. But when I finally learned the truth behind that money, I realized this wasn't just about inheritance. It wasn't just about family squabbles. It was about a secret my mother had kept for decades. A secret that could either shatter my family forever or set me free. And I had to choose which one it would be. I didn't sleep much after finding that account. The glow of the screen haunted me long after I shut the laptop. Those numbers burned into my mind. $98,000. A secret fortune, carefully tucked away under my mother's name alone. Why hadn't she mentioned it in the will? Why hadn't she left instructions for the others? Why me? I stared at the ceiling that night, replaying childhood memories like reels of old film. That account didn't appear out of nowhere. Mom had been building it, brick by brick, right under our noses. And if I was going to understand the why, I needed to go back and look at our family the way it really was, not the polished picture Dad liked to present, but the messy, fragile truth. Growing up, our house was a theater and we were the actors. Everyone had a role to play. Amanda, the dazzling star, Jackson, the lovable clown, and me, the dependable understudy who never forgot her lines. Dad orchestrated it all. His approval was like rare sunlight, we craved it, but it always seemed to shine brighter on Amanda. I remember one night at the dinner table. Amanda was maybe 12, I was 10, Jackson only 7. Amanda had gotten into some honor society at school, and Dad was practically glowing. "That's my girl," he said, squeezing her shoulder, "always making me proud." She leaned into him like a cat soaking up attention, her smile perfectly calculated. I'd gotten a straighter report card that same day. I slid it across the table, my little heart pounding. Dad glanced at it, nodded. "That's what I expect, Cherry." Then he went right back to Amanda's achievements. The dismissal stung, but I learned something that night. In our family, effort was invisible. Perfection was expected. Only Amanda's charm earned real praise. Jackson, on the other hand, was immune to consequences. He once broke a neighbor's window with a baseball, and instead of punishment, Dad clapped him on the back. Boys will be boys, he chuckled. I'd stood there fuming, knowing if I had done the same, Dad would have scolded me for weeks. Mom always tried to soften the blows. She'd slip me a piece of candy later, whisper, "I'm proud of you, don't let it hurt too much." But no matter how sweet her reassurances, they couldn't erase the imbalance etched into our family. As we grew older, Amanda leaned harder into her role as the golden child. She learned how to weaponize her charm, especially with Dad. I'll never forget the time she wrecked his car in college. It was late, icy roads, and she'd been out at a party. Dad stormed into the living room the next morning, holding the accident report. "Do you know how much this will cost me?" he roared. Amanda burst into tears, throwing herself against his chest. "Daddy, I'm so sorry, it was an accident." He melted instantly, stroking her hair. "It's okay, pumpkin, cars can be fixed." That same year, I got a speeding ticket, 9 miles over the limit. Dad refused to speak to me for a week. Mom found me crying in my room and just hugged me. "You know how he is," she murmured. "You can't take it personally." But how could I not? The favoritism was so blatant, it became a wound that never fully healed. And then there was Jackson. His mischief grew into recklessness. Skipping classes, drinking, disappearing for nights at a time. Every time, Dad brushed it off. "He'll grow out of it," he'd say, as though Jackson's failings were just part of the package of being the cherished son. Meanwhile, I was working 2 part-time jobs in college, holding down a perfect GPA, paying my own rent. Dad never said a word of pride. Mom did though, she always did. I see now how much that meant. How she'd slip me notes in my lunch box, "I love you. I see how hard you're working." How she'd sit up late at the kitchen table with me while I studied, bringing me tea and rubbing the tension out of my shoulders. Those nights were hours alone. The rare moments when I felt like I mattered, really mattered to someone. Looking back, I can see how Mom carved out small spaces for each of us to feel loved. She had to, because Dad's approval was too scarce and too conditional. But there were other things I didn't notice at the time. Tiny habits that, in hindsight, meant more than I realized. The way Mom always carried cash in her wallet, even though Dad insisted on credit cards for everything. The little envelopes she tucked into the back of her dresser. Her careful bookkeeping, writing down every purchase like she was documenting evidence. Once, when I was 16, I caught her slipping a $20 bill into an old coffee tin at the back of the pantry. "What's that for?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Rainy day fund." I didn't press. At the time, it seemed harmless. Cute, even. But years later, as I stared at that bank account with nearly $100,000, the memory made sense. That wasn't just a rainy day fund, that was survival. When Mom got sick, the cracks in our family became canyons. I was the one who rearranged my life. I cut my work hours, scheduled her appointments, memorized the names of every doctor and nurse. I learned the dosage of each medication like scripture. Amanda, she breezed in every few weeks with expensive flowers and a dramatic display of devotion. But when Mom needed help showering, Amanda always had an excuse. Her kids, soccer game, an urgent work call, a migraine that required rest. Jackson, he tried. He really did. He'd bring ice cream and make Mom laugh. But responsibility wasn't his language. He'd promise to stay overnight, then text me at midnight with a flimsy excuse. And Dad, he buried himself in work. He couldn't stand to see Mom frail, couldn't stomach the slow reality of her decline. He show up at the hospital in a crisp suit, talk to her about business deals, and then vanish again. So it was me, always me. I fed her soup when she was too weak to lift a spoon. I rubbed her back when chemo made her sick. I stayed up through endless nights when pain wouldn't let her sleep. Sometimes, in those quiet hours, she'd open up to me in ways she never had before. She told me about dreams she'd given up, regrets she'd never voiced. "I always wanted to open a bookstore," she whispered once, her voice thin. "Your father thought it was silly, but I wanted a little place filled with stories where people felt safe." I squeezed her hand. You would have made it beautiful. She smiled, but her eyes were sad. It wasn't until one particularly rough night, when she pressed that small leather journal into my hands, that I realized she was leaving me more than memories. When the time comes, she said, her voice trembling, you'll know what to do. At the time, I thought she was just talking about funeral arrangements, or maybe the will, but now I know better. After her death, that journal became my lifeline. I hadn't opened it yet, too afraid of what I might find. But the hidden account, nearly $100,000, made her words echo in my head. You'll know what to do. It wasn't long before Amanda cornered me again. You're being shady, she snapped over the phone. Dad said there's some account you didn't mention at first. I only just found it, I explained. I'm sorting through everything. You always act like the Saint Cherry, but maybe you're just greedy. Her words dripped with venom, but beneath it I heard something else. Fear. Amanda had lived her whole life certain she'd inherit more than anyone else. The idea that Mom had left something for me, something secret, threatened her throne. Dad, meanwhile, was growing colder. His questions about the estate weren't casual anymore. They were interrogations. And Jackson, even he started looking at me differently. Suspicion in his eyes, like he couldn't decide if I was still the sister who had always bylaid him out, or someone new. That's when I realized the $98,000 wasn't just money, it was a spark, a match waiting to ignite everything we'd buried under decades of roles and unspoken resentment. And when the fire finally caught, it would consume us all. The weeks after Mom's funeral felt like walking through fog. Every morning, I'd wake up expecting to hear her humming in the kitchen or smell her coffee brewing, and then reality would slam into me like a truck. She was gone. But grief didn't have the luxury of silence in my family. It had to fight for space against suspicion, whispers, and accusations that grew louder by the day. It all came down to the $98,000. The first time Dad brought it up, his voice was deceptively calm. He sat at the head of the dining table, his leather chair creaking as he leaned forward. The estate spreadsheets I'd carefully prepared were spread between us. What's this? He asked, tapping a line item with his finger. Unmarked account, 98,000. I steadied my voice. It was in Mom's name only, I just discovered it, I'm still gathering information. Dad's eyes narrowed. And why wasn't it in her will? I don't know yet, I admitted. But I'll be transparent about everything. I've uploaded all documents into the shared folder. His jaw clenched. Transparency doesn't mean much if money disappears before anyone else sees it. The accusation hung there, heavy, poisonous. I haven't moved anything, I said firmly. But his silence told me he didn't believe me. Amanda was less subtle. She cornered me in the driveway one evening, arms crossed, perfume so strong it clung to my clothes long after she left. You always thought you were Mom's favorite, she sneered. But don't think we don't see what you're doing. That money isn't yours. I never said it was mine. Then why are you hiding it? Why did Mom tell you and not the rest of us? I don't know yet, I said again, though the words were starting to feel like lies, even to me, because deep down I did know. Mom had trusted me in ways she hadn't trusted anyone else. And Amanda could sense it. That's what burned her most. Even Jackson, my sweet, chaotic younger brother who had once whispered secrets to me under blanket forts, started shifting away. We were sorting through boxes of Mom's things when he asked casually, So, what's the deal with that 98 grand? I froze, holding one of Mom's old sweaters to my chest. What do you mean? He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. Amanda says you're being shady about it. Dad too, just tell me straight, did Mom leave it for you? My throat tightened. I don't know, she didn't say. He studied me for a long moment, then muttered, I hope you're not lying to me, Cherry. That cut deeper than I expected. By the third week, the air in our family was crackling with tension. It didn't matter how many spreadsheets I made, how many emails I sent with attachments labeled full transparency. They didn't trust me. It all came to a head one Thursday evening. My phone buzzed with a group text, family meeting, tomorrow 7 p.m. Dad's house. Mandatory. No explanation, no negotiation, just an order. I stared at the screen, my stomach knotting. I already knew what it would be about. The next evening, I walked into Dad's living room carrying a folder of estate documents like a shield. The room smelled of leather polish and aftershave, sharp and suffocating. Dad sat in his usual armchair, posture rigid, eyes hard. Amanda perched on the sofa beside him, arms folded, satisfaction flickering across her face like she'd already won. Jackson leaned against the fireplace mantel, shifting uncomfortably. The air was thick with accusation, before a single word was spoken. "Sit down," Dad ordered. I did, setting the folder on the coffee table. "I've brought updates on the estate." "Oh, it's about the estate all right," Amanda interrupted, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Specifically about the money that seems to have vanished." My pulse quickened. Nothing's vanished, everything accounted for. "Don't play innocent," Dad snapped, leaning forward. His eyes were icy, his finger stabbing the air. "The account was emptied 3 days ago." I froze. "What?" Amanda smiled like a cat who'd cornered a mouse. She slapped bank statements onto the table. "Walter requested these directly. Mom's account was drained. $98,000. Gone." My mouth went dry. The truth was, she wasn't wrong. I had moved the money, not into my own account, never, but to the place Mom had asked me to, the East Side Women's Shelter. I had the receipts. The donation had been processed in her name. But how could I explain that without exposing everything Mom had confided in me, without dragging her private pain into the light for everyone to dissect? Dad's voice rose, thundering. "You had no right to transfer that money anywhere. As executor, you have a fiduciary responsibility to the beneficiaries. Return the money or face legal action." Amanda chimed in, triumphant. "Mom would be so disappointed in you, Cherry. She trusted you, and you betrayed her." The room tilted around me. Their words stabbed deeper than they could know. Mom trusted you. Yes, she had, and that's why I couldn't betray her last wish. But standing there, accused of theft by my own father, cornered by Amanda's gleeful venom, I felt myself breaking. Jackson spoke up softly. "Maybe we should let her explain." "There's nothing to explain," Dad thundered. "She took it, she'll return it, end of story." Amanda's eyes glittered with cruelty. "Face it, Cherry, you were alone with Mom at the end. Who knows what you convinced her to do when she was medicated and vulnerable?" That one hit like a knife between my ribs. I could barely breathe. I looked at Jackson, desperate for some sliver of support, but his eyes flickered with doubt too. And that's when the curiosity question that had been brewing inside me spilled out, trembling on my lips. "Have you ever stopped to wonder," I whispered, "why Mom didn't trust any of you with this money?" The silence that followed was deafening. For a heartbeat, no one moved, then Dad slammed his hand on the armrest. "Enough." "You have 1 week," he growled, standing so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. He jabbed a finger toward me, his face red with fury. "1 week to return every penny, or I'll ruin you. Don't come back until it's done." Amanda's voice sliced in. "You heard him, fix what you've done." The folder of documents sat untouched on the table. My throat burned. My chest felt like it was caving in. I gathered the folder in shaking hands and stood, my legs unsteady. "You have no idea what Mom really wanted," I said, my voice breaking. Amanda scoffed. "Oh, spare us the martyr act." But I didn't wait for more. I walked out, the weight of their betrayal pressing down on me, each step heavier than the last. In the car, parked outside the house I'd grown up in, the dam broke. I sobbed into my steering wheel, the pain of their accusations mingling with the raw ache of missing Mom. And for the first time, I asked myself the question that terrified me most. Would I have to expose my mother's deepest secret, just to clear my name? After I drove away from my father's house that night, the city blurred around me through streaks of tears. Red stoplights bled into yellow street lamps, the dark shapes of buildings pressed in on me like watchful giants. I didn't know where to go. Home felt like a prison of silence, so I drove aimlessly until I ended up at Frick Park, Mom's favorite place. The place where she'd walked me through heartbreaks, where she'd whispered truths I hadn't been ready to hear. I parked, killed the engine, and sat in the stillness. The pond shimmered faintly under the moonlight. Somewhere nearby, an owl hooted. My body finally sagged, exhausted. That was when her words came back to me. Words she'd spoken during one of those late-night hospital conversations when pain kept her awake. "They're stealing you, Cherry," she'd whispered. "You hide it better than I did, but it's there. When the moment comes to use it, don't hesitate." I hadn't understood then, but now I did. The $98,000 wasn't just money. It was her rebellion, her truth. And she had left me, not Amanda, not Jackson, not even Dad, to decide what to do with it. The question was, could I carry that weight? The next morning, my hands trembled as I unfolded Mom's final letter. The one she'd sealed in the envelope tucked deep inside her jewelry box. "My dearest Cherry," it began. "If you're reading this, then I've finally told you everything I couldn't say out loud. The money in that account is not part of the estate. It is mine, saved over decades in secret, scraped together in bits and pieces of independence your father never knew I had. It belongs to the East Side Women's Shelter. They saved my life once, and I want them to save others. Please honor this wish. Even if it costs you, I trust you." I read it twice, 3 times. My tears blurred the ink. The weight of her trust sat heavy in my hands. I'd already moved the money, already signed the donation paperwork. The shelter's director, Susan Giddy, had cried on the phone when I explained. "Your mother changed lives here," she said. "This gift will save more." Mom's legacy was already in motion. But now my family was circling like vultures, ready to tear me apart for it. I had 1 week before Dad unleashed legal hell. I met with Walter, the family attorney, the next day. I slid Mom's letter across his desk, my voice trembling. If I followed her explicit written instructions, even though they weren't in the will, where does that leave me? Walter adjusted his glasses, reading carefully. When he finally looked up, his face was grave. "Legally, you're in a gray area. As executor, you have discretion, but the other beneficiaries can absolutely challenge you. They'd likely win, unless the court accepts this letter as evidence of intent. And if they challenge, you'd have to present this letter, and possibly your mother's journals. They'd become part of public record." My stomach dropped. Her journals. Walter nodded. Her history, her pain, it would all be scrutinized. Are you prepared for that? I couldn't answer, because that was the dilemma: protect Mom's privacy or protect myself. Either way, someone I loved would be betrayed. The following evening, the family group chat lit up. "Dad, family meeting. Friday, 7 p.m. my house. Don't be late. Amanda, bring proof this time, Cherry. We're done playing games. Jackson." I stared at the glowing screen. The dread crawled up my spine. I couldn't do another ambush on their turf. Not again. So I typed back, "No, tomorrow 6 p.m. my apartment. All must attend." The replies were instant. "Amanda, excuse me. Dad's house is where we meet." "Dad, we'll do it here." "Me, no, my place, my terms, or don't bother showing up." Then silence. My heart pounded. For the first time, I'd said no to them. The next day, I prepared like I was going to war. I cleaned the apartment until it gleamed. I arranged the dining table with neat stacks of documents, bank teller slips, transaction records, the shelter's receipt. Each sibling had a folder with their name on it. I even baked Mom's favorite lemon cookies, not as a peace offering but as a reminder. This wasn't about us. This was about her. When the doorbell rang at 6 sharp, I felt my legs tremble. They arrived together, like a united front. Dad's jaw was clenched, Amanda's smirk firmly in place, Jackson trailing behind them like a reluctant soldier. "I hope this means you've come to your senses," Dad said, standing stiff in my doorway. "Come in," I said evenly. "Sit down, there are things you need to see." Amanda scoffed. "The only thing we need to see is a transfer confirmation." I held her gaze. Either sit down or leave now and deal with Walter. Something in my tone must have startled them, because for the first time, Amanda faltered. They filed into my apartment, taking their seats at the table. The stage was set. I began slowly, carefully. I haven't taken a single penny from Mom's estate for personal use. The 98,000 was transferred to the East Side Women's Shelter, exactly as Mom instructed me to do. Amanda laughed bitterly. Instructed you, prove it. So I slid copies of Mom's letter across the table. Her handwriting was unmistakable, the words undeniable. They read in tense silence. Dad's face tightened. Amanda's lips pressed into a thin line. Jackson shifted, eyes flicking to me with something like relief. This could be fake, Amanda hissed finally. Which is why, I said calmly, I also have these. I laid down selected copies of Mom's journal entries, pages documenting her secret savings over 2 decades, her intent to donate it, her private rebellion. I'd redacted the most personal details, but the truth was clear. Dad's voice cracked. Elaine never kept secrets from me. I met his eyes. Didn't she? When's the last time she made a purchase over $50 without asking you first? His silence said everything. Amanda leaned forward, her voice sharp. Even if this is true, you had no right to act alone. That money belongs to the estate. You're right, I admitted. I took a legal risk, but I chose to honor Mom's wishes over technicalities. Dad slammed a fist onto the table, rattling the coffee cups. Your choice has consequences. Walter will file a complaint tomorrow. My pulse pounded, but I was ready. Slowly, deliberately, I placed a sealed envelope in the center of the table. This, I said, my voice steady, contains the unredacted journal entries, the full truth about Mom's past. If you drag me into court, this becomes public record. Every secret she kept, every pain she carried will be exposed. Is that what you want? Their faces drained of color. Amanda's bravado faltered first. You're bluffing. I shook my head. No, I'm protecting her. She trusted me to keep her privacy intact. But if you force my hand, the world will know everything. That's the price of fighting me. The room went silent. Even Dad's authority seemed to shrink under the weight of what I'd said. Jackson spoke into the stillness, his voice quiet but firm. I trust Cherry, and I trust Mom. If she wanted this, we should respect it. Amanda's head whipped toward him. Easy for you to say, you already got your art collection. This is about fairness. No, Amanda, I cut in. This is about respect. Respect for the one person who gave us everything. Respect for her one independent choice after a lifetime of having none. My hands shook, but I didn't look away. The money's already gone, I said quietly. The shelter's security system is being upgraded as we speak. Mom's counseling program begins next month. Her legacy is alive. The only question now is whether you want to destroy this family fighting it or honor her by letting it stand. Dad stared at the envelope. His face was unreadable, but something shifted in his eyes, doubt, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. Amanda opened her mouth, but Dad lifted his hand, silencing her. You're asking us to trust you without explanation, he said finally. No, I corrected. I'm asking you to trust Mom, to believe she had her reasons, even if she didn't share them with you. The moment hung on a knife's edge. Would they choose control or respect? For a long moment, no one breathed. The envelope sat on the table like a live grenade, humming with unspoken history, ready to blow open everything we had ever pretended to be. Dad's hands flexed on the armrest of his chair. Amanda's nails drummed a nervous tattoo against her thigh. Jackson stared at the journal pages, his mouth working silently like he wanted to speak, but didn't know where to begin. And me, I sat perfectly still, my heart pounding, my palms slick. If I moved even an inch, the whole illusion of control I'd built would crumble. It was Amanda who broke first. This is manipulation, she hissed. Mom was sick. Chemo makes people confused. She probably didn't even know what she was writing. I slammed my hand on the table before I could stop myself. Don't you dare reduce her last words to confusion. You weren't there when she whispered them. You weren't the one who stayed up with her night after night while she poured out the truth. I was. My voice cracked, but the fire in it was real. The shouting match escalated quickly. Amanda rose from her chair, her face red. You think just because you played nurse you're entitled to everything. Newsflash, Cherry, you're not the only daughter she had. Dad barked over her, lower your voice. This isn't about entitlement, it's about legality, and the law will side with me. Jackson muttered, Jesus, can we stop screaming for 1 second? But no one listened. The tension crackled until it was unbearable. My chest hurt with the effort of holding back everything I wanted to say. Finally, I couldn't anymore. You want to know the truth? I shouted. Mom saved that money because she couldn't trust Dad. She couldn't trust you. She wanted independence. She wanted freedom from being controlled every second of her life. That money was the only thing she ever got to decide on her own. The words were out before I could reel them back. Dad froze. Amanda's eyes went wide. Jackson flinched like I'd slapped him. And then Dad stood up. His chair screeched back. His face was crimson, veins bulging in his neck. How dare you, he roared. How dare you speak about your mother like that in this house? I'm speaking her truth, I shot back. He took one step toward me, fist clenched. For a terrifying moment, I thought he might actually hit me. Dad, stop, Jackson shouted, stepping between us. But Dad wasn't looking at me anymore. His eyes rolled back, his hand clutched his chest, and before I could even register what was happening, his body crumpled. The next moments blurred. Amanda screamed. Jackson shouted for someone to call 911. I dropped to my knees beside Dad, pressing 2 fingers to his neck. A weak pulse fluttered beneath my touch. His skin was clammy, his lips tinged gray. Dad, stay with me, I cried, shaking him lightly. Amanda was fumbling with her phone, shrieking at the dispatcher. Jackson ran to the door to flag down the paramedics. I pressed my hands to Dad's chest, counting compressions, hearing the brittle cracks of ribs beneath my palms. His eyes fluttered, rolled, closed. My tears fell onto his shirt as I whispered, "Don't you dare leave me like this. Not like this." The paramedics burst through the door in a whirl of uniforms and equipment. They pulled me back, sliding oxygen over Dad's face, attaching monitors, lifting him onto a gurney. Amanda sobbed uncontrollably, clutching her designer purse like it was a lifeline. Jackson kept packing, running his hands through his hair. And me, I stood frozen, my hands still shaking, the ghost of his heartbeat still pulsing through my fingertips. At the hospital, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled of antiseptic and fear. We sat in the waiting room, the 3 of us silent, our earlier fight swallowed whole by the gravity of what had just happened. Hours crawled by. Nurses bustled past. The coffee in the vending machine tasted like ash, but I sipped it anyway just to have something to hold. Finally, a doctor appeared. Mid-40s, calm eyes, clipboard in hand. "Family of Harold?" he asked. We scrambled to our feet. "He's stable," the doctor said. Relief washed over us in a wave. It was a mild heart attack brought on by stress. We've done an EKG and chest x-rays. There's some arterial blockage we'll need to monitor, but he's lucky. He'll need rest and medication. Amanda clutched her chest dramatically. Thank God. The doctor's eyes flicked to each of us. Stress is a major factor here. If there are unresolved conflicts at home, I strongly recommend family therapy. His gaze lingered on me, like he could see through my skin to the secret I carried. We were allowed to see Dad briefly. He lay in the hospital bed, pale but conscious, wires snaking across his chest. Machines beeped steadily, keeping rhythm with his breath. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. But his eyes were still steel. "You," he rasped, pointing at me with a trembling hand. "You did this." My throat closed. "Dad." "You stressed her out," Amanda jumped in, her voice rising. "You and your games with Mom's money, you nearly killed him." I stepped closer, forcing calm into my voice. "Dad, you had a heart attack because you refused to face the truth. Not because of me. Mom's choices weren't my fault." His jaw clenched, his eyes burned. But he said nothing more, just turned his face away. Jackson lingered by the door, his shoulders slumped. When I caught his eye, I saw it, the conflict tearing him apart. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the hospital window, staring at the city lights, Mom's journal open on my lap. One entry caught me like a knife. March 3, 2015. Sometimes I dream of walking away, just packing a bag and never coming back. But then I think of Cherry. She sees me. She carries me. If I can't escape for myself, maybe I can escape for her. My chest tightened. The truth was undeniable now. Mom's money wasn't about greed. It was about survival. It was about giving others the freedom she never had. And if I stayed silent, if I let Amanda and Dad twist it into something ugly, I'd be betraying her all over again. But was I strong enough to fight them? The next morning, Walter the lawyer met us in the hospital cafeteria. He looked exhausted, but his voice was firm. I've reviewed the documents. Legally, Elaine's letter isn't airtight. If Harold and Amanda push, they can sue. But I need to warn you, if we go to court, everything in her journals will be public. Every confession, every regret. Are you sure you want that? I looked at Amanda, sipping her latte with smug satisfaction. At Dad, grimacing with pain but still clinging to control. And at Jackson, chewing his nails, torn between loyalties. Then I thought of the shelter director's voice on the phone. Your mother changed lives here. This gift will save more. Mom had lived her whole life in silence. Maybe it was time her truth was finally heard, even if it tore us apart. I straightened my shoulders. If they sue, we fight. And if the journals come out, so be it. I won't let Mom's last wish be erased. Amanda's cup clattered onto the table. Dad's face went red. Jackson's eyes widened. The war lines were drawn. And as I walked out of the hospital cafeteria, my heart hammering, I knew one thing for certain. The battle for Mom's legacy had only just begun. The hospital air was cold and stale, yet it crackled with tension thicker than smoke. After Walter's warning, Amanda was already texting furiously, probably lining up her strategy. Dad sat hunched over his cup of black coffee, silent but seething, his presence still heavy even though the heart monitor had forced weakness onto him. And then there was Jackson. He hadn't said much since the collapse, but the way his eyes flickered between us told me something was brewing inside him, like a storm forming far off the coast. The next evening, when I went back to check on Dad, I found Jackson waiting for me in the hallway. He was leaning against the vending machine, a Snickers bar in one hand, his shoulders slumped like a boy again instead of a man in his 30s. Can we talk? He asked quietly. I nodded, heart racing. We stepped outside into the hospital courtyard. The night air was damp, smelling faintly of rain and disinfectant. Jackson shoved his hands in his hoodie pocket, avoiding my gaze. I read the journal, he said finally. My chest tightened. You what? He glanced at me, guilt etched across his face. Amanda stole a few pages while you weren't looking. She shoved them at me and said, read this, it proves Cherry's manipulating everything. But it didn't prove that, it proved something else. My breath caught. What did you see? Jackson's eyes glistened under the yellow courtyard lights. I saw Mom, the real Mom, not the saint Amanda parades for sympathy, not the dutiful wife Dad always praised. I saw a woman who was suffocating. A woman who hid pieces of herself because she was terrified of being crushed if she didn't. And I saw that she trusted you to carry her secret when she couldn't carry it anymore. Tears welled in my eyes. My brother's words were like water after a long drought. So you believe me, I whispered. He nodded slowly. Yeah, and I think I always did, I just didn't want to admit it. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the smallest flicker of hope. But hope was fragile in my family. The next morning, Amanda called for another family meeting in the hospital cafeteria. She loved staging these confrontations like courtroom dramas where she could star in the leading role. She came armed, literally carrying a binder stuffed with highlighted papers, sticky notes jutting out at every angle. She slammed it on the table, sending packets skidding. This, she announced, is evidence of Cherry's mismanagement. Bank slips, transfer dates, journal entries conveniently left out of the will. She looked at Walter, who sat stiffly beside me. We're filing suit, Dad agrees. Dad gave a curt nod, his hospital wristband peeking out from his sleeve. His voice was gravel. She's broken fiduciary duty, that's enough for court. I felt the walls closing in, my pulse roaring in my ears. But before I could speak, Jackson leaned forward, his voice clear and steady in a way I'd never heard before. "No," he said. Amanda blinked. "Excuse me." "No," he repeated. "I've read the journals, all of them, not just the pieces you cherry-picked. Mom wanted that money to go to the shelter. Cherry didn't steal anything. She carried out Mom's last wish. That's the truth." Amanda's face turned scarlet. "You're taking her side." "I'm taking Mom's side." The words sliced through the room like a blade. Amanda exploded. "You don't understand, Jackson. You've always been the baby, coasting through life while Cherry and I actually dealt with things. You don't know what it's like to sacrifice." Jackson shot up from his chair, eyes blazing. "Sacrifice? You call popping in with flowers once a month a sacrifice? Cherry gave up years of her life to care for Mom while you were too busy polishing your perfect image for Dad." Amanda recoiled, stunned by his fury. Dad's lips pressed into a thin line, but he didn't interrupt. And then Jackson turned to me, his voice softened, breaking. "I should have stood up for you sooner, Cher. I'm sorry. Mom always said you were the strongest of us. She was right. You're the only one actually honoring her." Tears blurred my vision. For the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. But Amanda wasn't done. She jabbed a finger at me. "Even if that's true, it doesn't matter legally. Without her intent in the will, the court will force you to return the money." Walter cleared his throat, sliding a paper across the table. "Actually, not necessarily. Elaine's letter and journal entries demonstrate clear intent. Combined with proof of donation, Cherry has a strong defense. A judge may very well uphold her actions." Amanda's mouth opened, then shut. Dad's hand tightened on his cane, the veins standing out like cords. And then finally his voice, "Show me." I froze. "What?" "Show me the receipts, the bank slips, the shelter's acknowledgement, all of it. If I'm going to hear this madness, I want to see the evidence with my own eyes." My hands trembled as I reached into my bag. One by one, I laid the documents on the table. The stamped teller slips, the certified donation receipt from the East Side Women's Shelter, a letter of thanks signed by the director. Dad studied them in silence, his brow furrowed. His lips moved faintly as he read, his finger tracing the shelter's letterhead. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, exhaling heavily. "She gave away $98,000 without telling me." His voice wasn't angry now, it was bewildered, broken. Silence stretched. The hum of the cafeteria refrigerator filled the space between us. Then Dad looked at me, and for the first time since this all began, there wasn't fire in his eyes. Just something tired, something wounded. "Why didn't she tell me?" he whispered. My throat closed. This was the moment, the confession, the truth I had both dreaded and longed to say. "Because you wouldn't have let her," I said softly. "Because for 40 years, every time she tried to make a choice, you controlled it. You decided what she could buy, where she could go, who she could see. She wanted one thing that was hers, just one. And she knew if she told you, you'd take it away." The words hung in the air, raw and unflinching. Dad's face crumpled. His hand trembled on the table. For a terrifying second, I thought he'd lash out. But instead, he pressed his palms to his eyes and whispered, "God forgive me." Amanda stared at him, stunned. "Dad." But he didn't answer. That night, Jackson walked me to my car. The hospital parking lot buzzed with fluorescent lights, moths fluttering around the lamps. "You did it," he said quietly. "No," I corrected. "Mom did, I just said what she couldn't." He nodded. "Still, you're braver than all of us." I unlocked my car but paused, turning back to him. "This isn't over. Amanda will keep fighting. Dad, I don't know where he stands now, but the truth is out, and we can't put it back." Jackson gave me a tired smile. "Maybe we're not supposed to." For the first time since Mom's death, I felt like the ground beneath me wasn't shifting. It was solid, even if it was painful to stand on. But the war wasn't done. Amanda's eyes still burned with fury. Dad's silence was its own kind of storm, and I knew, sooner or later, I would face a final reckoning. Still, one truth rang louder than the fear. Mom's voice had finally been heard. The days after that cafeteria showdown felt eerily quiet, like the silence after a storm that's ripped half the trees out of the ground. You're standing there, blinking at the wreckage, wondering what's still standing and what's lost forever. Amanda stopped speaking to me completely. Her texts, once constant streams of venom, dried up. Dad stayed in the hospital a few more days, his body weaker but his authority still lingering like smoke in every room. Jackson checked in with me daily, his voice softer than it had ever been, his loyalty finally clear. And me, I carried Mom's journal everywhere. Like armor. Like proof that I wasn't crazy, that her truth was real, even if no one else wanted to believe it. A week later, Dad called. His voice was hoarse, uncertain in a way that unsettled me. "Coffee," he said, just that one word. Not a question, not a request, but not a command either. We met at a small cafe Mom used to love, the kind with chipped mugs and scones that crumbled if you looked at them too hard. He looked older than I remembered, his shoulders hunched, his hands trembling slightly as he stirred sugar into his coffee he wouldn't drink. "I thought I was protecting her," he said finally, staring into the mug. "Handling the money, making the decisions. I thought that was my role, my duty." I swallowed hard, but it wasn't her choice, it was yours. He nodded slowly. "I see that now, I never thought she needed protecting from me." His voice cracked on the last word. It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but from Dad it was closer than I ever thought I'd get. Before we left, he cleared his throat, unable to meet my eyes. "The shelter, it's a good cause, your mother would be pleased." It was his way of conceding, not acceptance, but not opposition anymore either. Amanda took longer, much longer. She maintained her icy distance for weeks, only contacting me when necessary for estate updates. But then, one Saturday afternoon, she texted, "Dance recital, 3 p.m. Lincoln Center. Bring flowers for Lily." No apology, no softening, just an olive branch wrapped in thorns. I went. I clapped for my niece until my palms stung. Afterward, in the crowded lobby, Amanda and I exchanged polite, stilted words about costumes and choreography. "They're building a new wing at the shelter," I mentioned cautiously. Amanda stiffened. "Oh," a pause, then, "will they name it after Mom?" "Yes," I said softly. "The Elaine Mitchell Counseling Center. Dedications next month." She gave one short nod. "Let me know when. If the girls don't have a competition, maybe we'll stop by." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Jackson, though, he became my anchor. He called me almost every day at first. Not to fight, not to gossip. Just to ask if I'd eaten, to share a memory about Mom, to sit in silence on the line when grief made words impossible. One weekend, we dug through the last of Mom's belongings together. In her sewing basket, we found little slips of paper, affirmations she'd scribbled to herself. "Your boundaries deserve protection," one read. Another, "Helping others heal heals you." Jackson held a tattered copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God, the margins filled with Mom's notes. His voice broke. She was so much more complicated than I ever knew. I nodded, tears streaming. I thought I knew her completely, but I missed so much too. We grieved her together that day, grief for her life, but also for the parts of her she'd hidden from us. In the months that followed, I began volunteering at the shelter myself. Not in crisis counseling like Mom had, but in something I knew, financial literacy. Many of the women there had never had their own bank accounts. They didn't know how to build credit, how to budget, how to protect themselves financially after leaving abusive relationships. Teaching them felt like handing them keys Mom never had, and it made me feel like I was carrying her work forward in a way only I could. 3 months later, I started a small support group for adult children of controlling parents. We met weekly in a church basement, folding chairs arranged in a circle. We shared stories about manipulation, about fear, about breaking free. At the end of each meeting, I'd close with one of Mom's favorite lines. "Understanding your past doesn't require repeating it." It became a mantra for us all. The dedication ceremony for the Elaine Mitchell Counseling Center came 6 months to the day after Mom's death. The shelter had been transformed, new security systems at every entrance, renovated counseling rooms, fresh paint that smelled faintly of lemon. A simple bronze plaque by the door read, where courage finds safety and new beginnings become possible. Susan, the shelter's director, gave a moving speech about Mom's years of service. One by one, women came forward to share how Mom had helped them, mentoring them, babysitting their kids during job interviews, holding their hands through panic attacks. I stood at the podium, heart in my throat, and spoke about Mom's belief in second chances, about how her quiet strength had touched more lives than we'd ever realized. And then, at the back of the crowd, I saw him. Dad, standing stiffly in his suit, uncomfortable but present. He didn't speak, didn't stay long, but before he slipped out, our eyes met. He gave me one small nod. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was respect. Amanda didn't attend, she sent flowers instead. The card read only, she would be proud. Jackson, though, stayed by my side the whole day, passing out cookies, chatting with staff, hugging women who thanked him for sharing his mother with them. For the first time, I felt like Mom's legacy wasn't just mine to carry, it was ours. In the years since, our family has settled into a new kind of normal, more distant in some ways, but more honest. Dad calls weekly now. Our conversations are careful, but they're also more real than they ever were when Mom was alive. Amanda and I keep things polite, centered on her kids. And Jackson and I are closer than ever, bound not by denial or pretense, but by truth. The $98,000 that nearly tore us apart has now saved dozens of women and children. Mom's quiet rebellion became a public legacy. Her secret act of reclamation became a lifeline for others. And I've learned something through all of this. Inheritance isn't measured in property or jewelry or money. It's measured in courage, in integrity, in the truths we're willing to carry forward, even when it costs us everything. Mom left me more than money, she left me her strength, and she trusted me to use it. I still keep her journal in my bedside drawer. On nights when the old guilt creeps in, I open it and run my fingers across her handwriting. On the last page, she had copied a quote. "The greatest gift you can give your children is not protection from change, challenge, or difficulty, but the confidence that they can overcome anything with truth and integrity." That confidence carries me even now. It's how I face each day, building a life that honors her courage while breaking the cycles she couldn't. Because healing isn't a destination, it's a practice, a daily choice, and every day I choose her. So now I ask you, have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed the way you saw everything? Have you ever had to choose between loyalty and truth? Share your story in the comments. Let's talk about the hard things together. And if this story touched you, please hit that subscribe button so others walking through family storms might find the courage to keep going. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is honor someone's truth, even when it breaks your heart. Thank you for listening.